Hey guys, I thought I would take a minute and do a short video on something I've experienced with scope shift with the temperature, shifting with the temperature. Been wanting to do this for a little while. I've experienced it over the last couple of years, and this year was a stark reminder that I needed to pay attention to it. So, but before I do that, I wanted to give a couple of shout outs and thank yous. First is to the Bayou Airgun Club in Louisiana. I've been there a few times for the Cajun Classic. The Cajun Classic is a Grand Prix event that they do every year, and they've been doing it for, I think, nearly 30 years, I believe is what it was. They've been doing it a long time. It's one of the oldest Grand Prix events in the U.S., I believe. They always put on a good show, a good match. Awesome, nice, super great people there. This year they did the AAFTA Nationals in Baton Rouge, and they did a great job. Had a lot of, I think it was 120 shooters there, I believe, from all over the country, big group from Puerto Rico. They did a great job with the Nationals, and it was challenging. This year I went to the Nationals there and was fortunate enough to win the Hunter class field target championship this year, and I was surprised. There was some awesome shooters from all over there, and I got to shoot with a lot of them, and it was tough. I'm telling you, it's the hardest I've concentrated in over 2 days of my life. It was tough, but had a good couple of days. Come home with the trophy. Made the long drive back to North Carolina a lot easier after winning, so I'm glad I went, and it was good. The second group I'd like to thank is the Tar Heel Airgun Club, and that's the club here in North Carolina that I'm a member of. I've only been shooting field target for a couple of years, but this club has taken me in, given me a lot of advice, taught me so much, shared their knowledge. A lot of great guys and gals in the Tar Heel Airgun Club, and I appreciate that. Without their help, I never would have won the championship this year for Hunter class field target, so my hat's off to them. Alright, so back to what this is supposed to be about. Scope shift with temperature change. Okay, so before I leave for Louisiana, and this was for the national championship, this was late September, early October. It was mid-80s here in North Carolina. I had all my markings on my focus wheel here. They were all accurate and had been doing good with it. So I get to Louisiana. The temperature is more like mid-90s, upper 90s, and humid. But the scope was ranging well. The targets I did miss at the championship in Louisiana was not the scope's fault. It was my fault. Or the gun's fault, really. Everything was ranging great. So finish in Louisiana, come back home to North Carolina, and as we often do here in North Carolina when the seasons change, we get very drastic shifts. So one day it'll be 90s, the next day it's like lower or upper 60s or something crazy. It's very typical for North Carolina. So get back to North Carolina and the temperature drops to 55 degrees. And I'm out on my sight-in range just to make sure the gun's shooting right after traveling. And I noticed that all of my yardages are wrong. They're all off. And I'm like, and it was, I knew what happened at that moment. It was the temperature had affected how my scope was ranging. And and I'll show you what I did here. I went through on every yard, or every yard marking that I use, and made a new mark. And that's my cold weather marks for my yardages. And so the short lines you see are my cold weather markings, and the long lines are my warm weather markings. Okay, so when it's warm I use the long lines, when it's cold I use the short lines. And as you can see how much it was off, at 55 yards I was probably like 2 or 3 yards off. That doesn't sound like a lot, but I'll guarantee you if you're in competition and you're 3 yards off at 55 yards ranging, you got a pretty good chance you're going to miss the target, because that you're using the wrong holdover and it's not going to hit exactly where you expect it to, let alone the wind and all that stuff. So you don't need anything else working against you. So all of them were off except for 10 was pretty much, because that's at the as low as it focuses pretty much. That's that was pretty consistent. But and even on the short ranges, it was off less than a yard. But you have to understand, at short ranges, if you've got a really small kill zone, at short ranges you're using your holdover changes a lot from yard to yard. So if you're off, you know, half a yard or a quarter of a yard, just a few feet, it'll make a difference, and you have a good chance of missing. So that was my solution, just making short extra lines on my scope wheel. Now, the problem I haven't figured out yet is, when does it shift exactly? And is it like a light switch? Is it like at a certain degree it just goes from hot to cold? I'm thinking it probably does, because I've talked to some other people who say that that's what their scope does. Now, this is a UTG 4-16 by 56 power scope. 4-16 power, 56 scope. This is not the most expensive field target scope out there. But for its price point, it's a good value. And I am not a scope expert by any means. I have limited experience with different kinds of scopes. But this is what I'm experiencing. So, but I know other people who have much more expensive scopes than mine, who have expressed that their scope does the same thing at a certain temperature, and they'll even say 68 degrees, my scope changes, and they've got it down to an exact degree. I'm not exactly sure what temperature this changes. I'm thinking it's around 70 maybe. And the reason I say that is, it was recently, after I come back from Louisiana, we shot the North Carolina championship, and it was cool, but it warmed up that day, and it warmed up to the upper 60s, and I was checking my scope. Warmed up to the upper 60s, but it was still accurate to my cold temperature markings. But I think I was getting pretty close to it shifting. I just have a feeling that, you know, probably 70, low 70s, somewhere in there, it's going to shift on me. I haven't figured out exactly when. I need to know. But at field target matches, you'll see guys and girls, ladies, excuse me, that have they'll have like a thermometer strip on their scope, and that's what that's for. Is they want to know what temperature their scope is, because they know it's going to shift at some point, and they've already got that figured out. So I don't have like a strip, sort of like what you see on a fish tank. I don't have one of those. What I did buy was one of these inexpensive laser pointer temperature gauges, and I can just, you know, find out. Right now it's 60 degrees. Find out what temperature the scope is even during a match, because if it sits in the sun or it just warms up, it could get to that, you know, that magic point where it's going to shift on you. So this time of year, I'll just carry that temperature gauge with me, and during a match, just check it. Another thing I do is I cover it up. If I'm sitting in the sun and I'm worried about it getting too hot, I'll just cover it up with a white towel, or some people use like a reflective, sort of like a sunscreen you put in your car. They'll put one over it. So anyway, that's what I've learned about temperature shift. I don't know everything about it, but I'm still learning. I hope this was helpful. Maybe it's something you've experienced too. If you like this video, if you want to like it and share it, feel free, and I appreciate it. And that's it for today. All right. Hope to see you around soon. Thanks.